Assalamu alaikum dear students, it's Tasmia here and I will be delivering you the lecture on Robert Frost's poetry in American literature. Today we will discuss the poem The Death of the Hired Man written by Robert Frost. This poem is a dramatic dialogue and a narrative poem. What is a dramatic dialogue? A dramatic dialogue is the one in which conversation is going on between two characters in the form of narration. In this poem, the conversation goes on between the farmer and his wife about their ex-servant Cecil. The poem is written in iambic pentameter. The iambic pentameter is a line of verse with 5 metrical feet, each consisting of one short syllable followed by one long or stressed syllable. So, the poem is written in iambic pentameter, that is the most popular form of English poetry. It is written in blank verse, which means it has no regular rhyme scheme. It is a free verse poem and is set in a rural or pastoral setting. This rural setting can be referred to as a relationship to Robert Frost's life as well, because the rural area or the countryside is the place where Robert Frost spent most of his life. The Death of the Hired Man is a long poem primarily concerning a conversation that goes on between a farmer, Warren, and his wife, Mary. The poem opens when Mary is awaiting the arrival of her husband, Warren, and when he arrives, she eagerly and discreetly greets him so that she can share a piece of important information, that is, the return of Silas. Silas was a former farmhand, was a former laborer at their farm. But then he left their farm and without informing Warren and without his consent, and so therefore Warren is quite angry with Silas because of his nature, because of his leaving the farm without any information. So now Mary is very careful to explain the circumstances of Silas's return to her husband, and she is expecting him to forgive Silas and to just let him stay at their farm and spend the rest of his life over there. Warren at first is very reluctant to forgive him, but then after Mary's compassionate urging, he is eventually convinced, but when he goes to get Silas, he is already dead. This action is, is representing the irony that exists in the poem and will be discussed later. The three major characters in the poem are the farmer, Warren, his wife, Mary, and their hired man, who is Silas. Actually, the title of the poem is also very symbolic, The Death of the Hired Man. So, it can symbolize that he was a hired man. He was a man who used to work at their farm. Now he is returning to their farm. He wants to be there. He thinks of the farm as his own home. But he is not accepted there as a member of the family by Warren. And so he is a hired man. That is why Warren is not much concerned about him. Rather, he is very indifferent towards him at the start. Later, when he feels compassionate and he feels a bit, in his heart gets a bit softened about Silas, he has already died. The Death of the Hired Man is a very typical poem by Robert Frost, in which an ordinary man and his wife turn into a philosophically significant debate. It has many stereotypical characteristics of Frost's poetry, that are the rural environment, the everyday struggle of the form couple over the relationship to the form hand and the colloquial dialogue. That is, the simple language, the simple conversation that can be easily understood by the reader. The blank form makes the text very clear, and therefore at times Frost even breaks up the stanzas by employing a dialogue just to create a very simple effect and to create an effect in the reader's mind that he is the one who is there in the conversation. Moreover, Frost is outlining the traditions of duty and hard work that he has explored in many of his other poems. The basic themes that are underlying this poem are family, power, justice, mercy, age, death, friendship, redemption, guilt, and belonging. The hired man of the title, as I explained it earlier, is the old laborer who is roaming and not staying in one place for a long time and simply going away without considering how and when he could be of the best use to others or to himself. This is the thing that makes Warren quite frustrated, quite angry towards Silas' personality, because he is of the view that Silas comes to them when he needs them, but then he leaves them when they need his services, when they need him to be with them to help them in their farm work. He has become old and almost unable to work, even though he has got a family, a brother who is a director in the bank. But then here we see the theme of relationship, the relationships that are neglected, that are undermined because of the monetary statuses, because of the social standing. And therefore his brother, he is preferring dignity to a well-to-do brother. And so Silas here also wants to be recognized as someone who has a self-worth, and therefore he prefers going back to Mary and Warren's farm than to go to his brother who is who is of a very high social status. Silas is always coming to Mary and Warren's farm once a year and staying there for a time being and then leaving in without any information, without any intimation, and in Warren's words, he is going away precisely when he is most needed. But he does not seem to understand that, though he has been told about it quite often by Warren. Mary here is a symbol of motherhood, or even Christ's or humanity's mother, and she is insisting that the man must be loved and cared for, even though he is committing mistakes, even though he is committing some blunders in his life, still he must be loved and cared for because he is a mortal human being. If he is dying, if he is sick, then there is no reason, no external reason that is necessary to love and care for a man. A man should be loved for the sake of humanity, for the sake of goodness, for the sake of kindness. Therefore, Warren and Mary's personality represent two poles of attitudes, two philosophies, and two ways to look at fellow beings or even life. The wife is representing love and sympathy, emotion and imagination, and she is evaluating human beings not in terms of reason or in terms of money or financial status, but emotions. Whereas the husband, Warren, is a practical modern man who is regarding and respecting people in terms of their work, their worth, their contribution, and so on. So you can say that the husband is representing reason, intellect, utilitarianism, practicality, and rationality in human life. The poem is set in the evening when the husband is due to arrive from work. I have discussed this thing earlier in the very start that Mary is waiting for her husband very eagerly. She greets him very passionately and then she tells him the news that Silas is back. And then she requests him to be kind. And to be kind is Mary's philosophy for which no reason or justification is required. But Warren, on the other hand, is quite irritated, and he replies that when was I ever anything but kind to him? He is right in his place because he has been very kind to Silas, but the idea of being kind to Silas in Mary's consideration, in Mary's conception, is completely different from that of Warren, and therefore she asks him to be kind to him again and again. But I'll not have the fellow back, he adds, because he has warned him not to leave the place the previous time the man had left. What good is he? Who else will harbor him at his age for the little he can do? Off he goes always when I need him most. I can't afford to pay. Warren is not to be convinced by what Mary says. What he objects to most about the reckless old man is that he is not responsible towards him either. Why doesn't the stupid old fellow better himself, even if he doesn't care for others? Silas is a man of a very carefree character, a very carefree free personality. He does not care about others, but he does not care about himself either. He is the one who does not know his self-worth, who does not know about what good he can be to himself or to the others. Again, Mary wants her husband not to be so loud, and so she is very sympathetic and she does not want Silas to hear what her husband is saying. And he laughs, Warren laughs when he sees his wife advocating Silas so much and trying to save the old man. So Mary tries to recount several incidents when the poor old man impressed her by the way he worked and talked in the past, but then it all sounded so funny to the heartless husband. The husband here is called as heartless, but actually he is not heartless. He is a practical sort of man who just wants to work to be done on time, and he wants the people to know the worth of the time and the worth of being with someone in the time when they are mostly needed. It is not that the old man was bad at work. In fact, as Mary remembered him, he had always been a skillful, hard-working man. Besides, he is such an honest and simple man to the extent of hating young boys whom he calls fools of books. So Silas, he is very concerned for the people, but he has nothing in his life to which he can look forward with hope or to look backward with pride. And that is why he is a very sort of carefree person who never takes life seriously. He just spends life for spending the life. The effect of sympathy then begins to down in Warren's heart, and here Frost has dramatically created a natural setting in which outside atmosphere corresponds to the inside affair. The appearance of the moon signifies the generating of sympathy and love in Warren's mind. Mary is overwhelmed with pity for the poor man, which is symbolically represented by the moonlight falling upon her lap immediately. The reader is caught in an emotional tone of the poem as Mary declares that Silas has come home to die. Frost is essentially emotional expression, blended with philosophy, finds its expression through Mary, who defines home as the place where when you have to go there, they will take you in. This sentence is the major theme that underlies the poem, that is homecoming or home. So Mary thinks that Silas considers them his family, and that is why instead of going to his rich brother at the time of problem and sickness, Silas comes back to Warren's house, comes back to the farm to marry and Warren, to die, to spend the last moments of his life. Warren's heart ultimately melts. He is feeling pity for the poor guy, but when he goes there to let him know that he can stay with them, he can be with them, he comes to know that Silas has already passed away. And so again, here we see that Warren's expression is not as sympathetic as Mary's expression was at the very start. The significance of this sequence of dialogue and events is self-explanatory. Once the basic thematic tension is understood. Thematically, the death of the hired man, who dramatizes the isolation of the individual and the difficulty of communication, is memorable for its poignant portrait of Mary's mercy overwhelming Warren's judgment as she persuades her husband to let the hired man return home. The conflict between Mary and Warren ends as they finally come close to each other, thereby emphasizing that reconciliations are of central importance to Frost, because they provide one of the few sources of sustenance in a stark world where God is inscrutable and not always benevolent. Another important truth that underlies this poem is that the people, they need to communicate with each other, they need to talk to each other, because sometimes it's important to speak your mind out. No, not everyone understands what is in your heart or what is in your mind until and unless you tell them so. So despite his skepticism regarding society and government, Frost did not believe people could stand alone and thrive, because man is a social animal. Although they should maintain their individuality, people need each other. They want to be with each other for their survival, for their existence. They need to communicate, they need to talk to each other, they need to express their feelings, their emotions, and their thoughts to any other person who is near to them. But then they can live together successfully only if they are not completely unyielding and allow their individuality to be subsumed by love. Now, after giving you a brief overview of the poem and the basic conflict and the basic idea that is going on in the poem, I would like to switch over to the theme of the poem now. The basic themes that are discussed in the poem are family, power, justice, mercy, age, death, friendship, redemption, guilt, and belonging. The most important and the major theme is that of the home or homecoming. As I have discussed earlier, Frost emphasizes this fact in the poem that it does not matter where you belong to actually, or whom you belong to in reality. The place you call home is the place where you always feel welcome, where you always feel like you can go there, you can rely on the people who are living over there. Same is the case here with Silas. He comes home to die, and that home, the place which he considers his home, is not his brother's place, not his parents' place, not his any other relative's place. Rather, it is Mary and Warren's farmhouse, where he used to work quite often, and he is thinking of that place as his home. Because even though Warren is behaving in a very harsh or in a very strict manner in the poem. He is not strict or he is not very harsh or rude in reality. He has been very kind to Silas quite often, and his irritation or his hard tone is a result of Silas's behavior, and that is quite temporary. We see that by the end, he gets emotional as well. He gets soft-hearted, but then by that time, Silas has already passed away. He is not there to feel the warmth that could be given or provided by Warren. So, coming back to the idea of homecoming, Warren wrestles with the idea that home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. So we can say that he is saying this statement quite sarcastically in the poem because he says it at the point where he is still not convinced of Silas's sickness, his ill health, his deteriorating health, and he's still angry with him for leaving them when it was the time for work, when it was the season for them to get some help from someone. And so Mary says that I should have called it something you somehow haven't to deserve. And according to her, Silas has evidently returned home to the farm to try to reaffirm some meaning in his life before he dies by helping with the next season and trying to redeem his relationship with Harold, the farm boy who was living in the farm with Silas and with whom he was always having some sort of quarrel, some sort of argument. These are the aims with which he comes back to the farmhouse, but none of these is fulfilled because he dies before he could do anything that he had thought of in his mind when he came to the farm. So the poem shines the light on Warren's progressive moral slide from resistance to acceptance of his responsibility of providing a home for Silas's death despite his wrongdoing. The question which arises here is that should Silas be given a home that he perhaps does not deserve? And Mary's point of view is that he has come home to die. You need not be afraid he'll leave you this time. So Mary's point of view is quite sympathetic. She has complete sympathies that are lying with Silas because she has seen his deteriorating health. She has seen him in such a condition that he could not even respond her in a very effective manner. Continuing on her theme of Silas's worth, she empathizes, his working days are done, I'm sure of it. Perhaps an also interesting side note is Frost's choice for Mary's name and her moral values. We can say, as will be discussed later on, that Mary's name is also very symbolic in this poem. Through the obvious moral dichotomy at the start of the poem between Warren and Mary, it could be very well interpreted that Mary has slowly convinced Warren to offer Silas a room at the house. Obviously, his offering comes too late with Silas having died arguably alone beside the stove. One thing that needs to be kept in mind here is that Silas's personality or Silas's character never appears in the poem. He is the person around whom the whole poem is knitted, but he is the character who never comes in front of the reader, who never appears in front of the reader. He is the one who is the topic of discussion throughout the poem. He is the central character, but not appearing in front of the reader or does not have any appearance in the poem. There are many critics that have analyzed and agreed that the theme that Robert Frost has presented in this poem is that People need to be forgiven and accepted before it is too late. Mary keeps on trying to convince Warren that he should forgive Silas because now he is too old, he is weary, he is very sick, and he might not have a long time to spend his life. But he keeps on arguing with her on the point that he is a very careless fellow and he does not know the value of relationships, he does not know the importance of duty, responsibility, and he does not even know his own self-worth. Ultimately, when Warren is convinced and he goes towards Silas to accept him, to forgive him, and to permit him to stay with them, he gets to know that Silas has already passed away. He cannot do anything now but to just say his final words for Silas. Now, coming to the poetical, structural, and metrical devices that have been used in the poem. Robert Frost has used a lot many poetic, structural, and metrical devices throughout the poem to grab readers' attention and to keep their interest awakened and keep their interest going on in the poem. Some of the poetical devices are as follows. First one is the art of characterization. Robert Frost has settled his character in such a way that the characters, they quite go in line with their names. And the most important one is that of Mary. Mary's name is symbolic of kindness, motherhood, and nurturing nature. And so this character is most appropriately depicted in the poem by Robert Frost. She is a person who is very kind, compassionate, loving, understanding, and motherly nature, who cares very much for the character of Silas because of the hard life that he has lived and because of the sickness that he is facing now, and she thinks that now is his last time and now he is going to die very soon. The reader can clearly see this motherly nature, this nurturing nature of Mary in these lines when she says, "No, but he hurt my heart the way he lay, and rolled his old head on that sharp-edged chair back. He wouldn't let me put him on the lounge. You must go in and see what you can do. I made the bed up for him there tonight. You'll be surprised at him how much he's broken. His working days are done, I'm sure of it." These words clearly depict her emotions and her feelings towards Silas, that he is a very weary fellow, he is a very sick fellow, and he deserves all the sympathies of his readers as well as of the people who are living in that place. Throughout the history, the name Mary has been synonymous with characters throughout the New Testament of the Bible. These characteristics can be seen through the biblical characters of Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus. Both Marys, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus, possessed the characteristic of kindness, nurturing nature, motherly attitude, compassion, and affection towards the people they were related to. This could be seen when Mary Magdalene wept at Christ's tomb after his crucifixion, and when Mary kept all things and pondered them in heart after the three Magi visited Jesus bearing gifts. Both of these examples show the love and compassion that the name Mary is famous for throughout the history, and that is quite appropriately portrayed by Robert Frost in his character Mary. According to Bloom, Mary has a perspective of compassionate identification and emotional response that contrasts Warren's more rational view of fair judgment. Frost has encapsulated Mary's attitude in one present tense active sentence, I sympathize. This is the statement that is the representation of Mary's whole personality. She is sympathetic, she is kind, she is loving, she is compassionate, and she is so kind-hearted that she just wants her husband to be nice to Silas and to give him a place to live and to a place to die. The next poetical device that has been used in the poem is iambic pentameter. As I have discussed earlier at the very start of the poem is written in iambic pentameter, which is a rhythmic pattern comprising 5 iambs in each line, like 5 heartbeats. It is one of the most commonly used meters in English poetry, and this iambic pentameter is preferred by the poets because of its simple pattern and because of its conversational style that poets prefer to use in their free verse poems. So, the same way, the use of this unrhymed iambic pentameter in the poem has helped Robert Frost create a sense of the poem appearing as a conversation between two people. This This style has helped the reader connect with Frost's theme because the dialogue that it creates helps the reader feel like this is more of an everyday problem that helps the reader relate, and it helps show how hard Mary is actually attempting to convince her husband to forgive and accept Silas before it is too late. If it was written in a rhymed pattern, then it could not give that effect that was aimed by Robert Frost. The reader would be reading it just for the sake of entertainment and could not get to the core of the poem, the message that Robert Frost wants to convey to his readers. The importance of the unrhymed iambic pentameter in this poem can be seen when Maurice Charney says, "The blank verse is supple and moves easily and goes together with definite syntactical indications of conversation." Another poetical device that has been used in the poem is alliteration. Alliteration basically is a term to describe a literary device in which a series of words begin with the same consonant sound and come one after the other. A classic example of this is, "She sells seashells by the seashore." So we see that "sir" and "sha" sound has been repeated quite often in the following words. In this poem, the line 20 and 21 gives us an example of alliteration when Frost says, "Enough at least to buy tobacco with, one half to beg and be beholden." The alliteration has been used here for the words beg and beholden to show how poor and desperate Silas's life actually is, and it helps the reader make the connection between Silas and that of the lost son in the allusion that Frost has presented in the poem. The next device that we will discuss here is simile. A simile is a figure of speech that makes a comparison showing similarities between two different things. Unlike a metaphor, a simile draws resemblance with the help of the words like or as. Therefore, it is a direct comparison. The simile has been used by Frost when he says, "Well, those days trouble Silas like a dream. So the use of this simile is depicting that Silas was attempting desperately to change, and he wants to make this change so that he will not disappoint his family. Now, keep this thing in mind that this family is not the family by blood. It is the family by emotion, the family in the name of humanity. And so he does not want to disappoint his family anymore, so that they would forgive him and accept him and let him be a part of their lives again. Another important simile is used in the poem when Robert Frost says, "He takes it out in bunches like big birds' nests." The simile is used to correlate the idea of a home with that of Silas, because a bird's nest is a bird's home. So that is another hint to show the reader that the poem is Silas's home, since the hay that looks like the bird's nest was the hay from Warren's farm. And this is the place where Silas is very comfortable and he wants to be there, he wants to spend the final moments of his life in that home. The next technique used here is foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a literary device in which a writer gives an advance hint of what is to come later in the story. In the lines 80 and 81, there is an example of foreshadowing when Frost says, "I sympathize. I know just how it feels to think of the right thing to say too late." These words were spoken by Mary when she is trying to sympathize, she is trying to convince her husband to be good, to be kind towards Silas, and to accept him as his own family member. This foreshadowing shows that Warren will know this feeling, because at the end of the poem, after he discovers that Silas is already dead, he realizes that he needed to tell Silas that he has forgiven him and accepts him before he had died. But now it was too late. All he could do was to say some nice words for him and to be his, to remember him in good words. Frost has also made an important use of imagery and symbolism in this poem. Imagery is the formation of mental images, figures, or likenesses of things or of such images collectively, like the dim imagery of a dream. Whereas symbolism is the practice of representing things by symbols or of investing things with a symbolic meaning or character. The imagery that Frost creates at the end of the poem creates not only an image in the reader's mind, but it also is used to foreshadow the ending of the poem. This image describes a small cloud that looks like it may hit the moon, which it does. This little cloud is symbolic for Silas' personality, who is trying to gain Warren's sympathies and trying to seek his forgiveness and acceptance, whereas the moon symbolizes Warren and the hitting is a symbol of whether Warren will ever forgive and accept Silas or not. When the cloud does strike the moon in the image, it is a depiction that the Warren finally will forgive and accept Silas. But then it will be too late for him to do so, because Silas would have already been dead by the time Warren's heart is softened towards him. Another important technique that has been made use of throughout the poem is allusion, specifically biblical allusion. Allusion is a device that activates and vitalizes the ideas, association, and information in the reader's mind through words and references. It reflects how the reader interprets the allusion and the references that are taken from the Holy Bible. Throughout the poem, Robert Frost has made use of the parable of the lost son that he uses to help convey the theme of the poem, that is, to give, to forgive, and to accept a man and care and love for him for the sake of humanity. Jesus in that poem is telling this story that even when Christians stray in their faith and at times do something wrong, their heavenly Father, that is, God, will always forgive them and accept them back with open, loving arms. Similarly, we should do this to the mankind, to the people who are around us, and to those who are looking towards us for forgiveness and acceptance, for affection and kindness. The reader can take this to an even more literal level, and that is where the theme of the poem is realized, as I have discussed just now, that even in this poem, Mary is symbolizing the father, and Warren, the angry, obedient son, and Silas will be the foolish young son who has wasted all of the inheritance. So Frost is attempting to show the reader that just as Mary has accepted Silas back into their home, her husband Warren needs to do so before he loses the chance to, with Silas's precious life coming to an end. And this is what actually happens in the poem, that in the end, when he tries to forgive him, he has lost the chance. So a very important message that is conveyed in this poem is that we should always try to forgive and to accept the people, to love them and to show kindness towards them, because life does not give us chances to do so again and again. It's just once in a lifetime sort of chance that you can forgive someone and accept them back in your lives. To sum up this lecture, we can say that the use of poetic, structural and metrical devices has made this poem a very notable piece of work, and Frost has been able to emphasize and show the different parts of his theme throughout the poem. And that theme is, once again I repeat here, to forgive and accept people for the sake of humanity, not for the sake of their worth, not for the sake of their money, not for the sake of the work or favors they can give to you, but to forgive them, to care for them, and to be kind towards them for the sake of humanity and for the sake of being good towards the creatures of the God. So that is all for today's lecture. The references are also given here if you want to get more information about this lecture, and if you want to get more from some internet sources, you can just go to these sites, these articles, and you can search more if you want to make your understanding more clearer and more easier. Thank you.